Have you ever spent time considering whether skeletons might be a wee bit jealous that zombies get to keep more of their skin? I for one am surprised they even agreed to work together without some kind of acknowledgement. Ahoy hoy, my name is Benji, and this is part 2 of how to build a Soulblight Gravelords army. If you haven't already seen part 1, well then you should probably do that now, or you could cheat a bit, knowing full well that the list we create today that will get us from 500 to 1000 points will include everything we brought to the glue sniffing paint station already. So, quick recap, we started crafting a skeleton-centric army and a vampire-tastic list that favours the Castelli dynasty. But very quickly then we should mention 2 things. One is that since part 1 of this series, 3rd edition has come out, and with it some tweaks to recognise match play breakpoints, which is the reason why we now start these army building series at 750 points. But 1000 is still a sweet spot for playing on smaller sized battlefields. Secondly, you can now army build with the newish Vrykos models on a unit by unit basis, instead of being stuck with one lump of 750 odd points. So if that floats your boat, go check it out. One last detail before we go onward bound, please do the subscribe thing and the touchy likey, thanks you very much. Commencing proceedings then with the 1000 bones list, we start where we left off with these 26 models, representing a tidy cross-section of bone and bone. The White King on skeletal steed has long since been errated, confirming that indeed he can do a captain's job of allowing a nearby death rattle unit to reroll hit rolls of 1 in the combat phase. And the death rattle skeletons are as rank and file as it gets. Black Knights have had a much needed points nerf down to 100 points for a unit of 5, and Graveguard are your elite, such as they are, skellies that come in both the hit harder and take more punishment varieties. As we grow from 500 we needed another leader to do the cool things that leaders do, and there was no better choice than a necromancer, because well, wizards do what wizards do. But this little skinny piggy also bestows the gift of fighting twice to a nearby summonable unit, which is basically everything in this army. And it's also the reason, as you'll discover, why we're reinforcing as many of our units as possible. Because although we want some wide board presence, we also want to make the most benefit from our leaders' buffs. So with low costing units, why can't we do both the good things? We then go full quantitative with our stock battle line, growing from one unit of 10 death rattle skeletons to that, plus a bulging unit of 20 of the Harryhausen specials. Yes, they're as flimsy as a plastic bag, but they come back to life, and the unit of 20 is still a good target for the Necromancers and White King's buffs, and well, they are one big blob pain in the arse, enough said. And in a story as interesting as the last one, we've gone from one unit of 10 converted battle line Graveyard to 2 units of 10 converted battle line Graveguard. Yes, their 1 wound apiece sucks, but being summonable has its perks, and why not bring one unit with sword and bald to cap an objective, and the other to go full glass cannon with great white blades? Sounds like a plan to me. Which leaves us with, and it pains me to say it because I feel like such a fraud with my lack of inspiration, but a unit of 10 Black Knights, reinforcing the 5 we brought previously. Now these guys, as I mentioned above, have had a nice points nerf, so these are only setting us back 200 points, and bring enough numbers horsebacking up the battlefield with the White King to be a critical mass for any nut you need to crack. And that there is 990 points of food is for losers. I honestly assumed I would start incorporating some vampires at this breakpoint, because well, that's inevitable. But for some reason the stars aligned, and we continue to go for quantity over quality. Good job, painting skeletons isn't the most painful thing you'll do in a lifetime. Truth be told though, this is a strong presence on the battlefield so long as you can keep all those balls up in the air and you've got your Raise Dead spell on speed dial. But without further ado, we get our fill of vampires in the I Want to Suck build. This is where we left things with a vampire lord doing what generic captains do. That being wielding a decent sized stick in combat and gifting attacks to a nearby summonable unit. Hence the big blob of zombies, which man for man are remarkably inferior to the skellies. Not even boasting an armor save of any kind. But this was always going to be a weird breakpoint for the Castelli dynasty because they want blood knights and they don't come cheap. But as far as elite cavalry go, they're up there with the best of them. Much like the skellies, we're also bringing another leader to bolster the high end, and possibly for the first time we're bringing a Warhammer Underworlds warband, the Crimson Cult. Which means Prince Duval is our named vampire lord to take over the general's reins. Most of what you're getting for the extra points over the vanilla vampire lord is the separate unit of 3 models he comes with. But where our prince has a leg up is that he's not synergistically tied to summonable units. His bespoke spell targets enemy units, albeit very close up ones, to the tune of +1 to hit rolls against them. Just a tidy all-rounder whichever way you look at it. There's no additions to our stock battle lines, but we're going from 1 unit of 5 converted battle line blood knights to 2 units of 5. And to elaborate on the overview we gave them, they're such an interesting unit because their strength is derived from charging. And so their absolutely bonkers ability to move freely even when engaged and dole out mortal wounds to any units they pass through is one hell of an enabler for the buff to their weapons damage when they subsequently charge later on in the round. These are really the signature unit of your army, so if you can't imagine the possibilities with the above, then maybe it's got to be a different build for you. Which brings us to Prince Duval's Crimson Cult, who don't really have an equivalent. They're much like other Underworlds warbands, a combination of different models all cozied up into one unit. Think of them as junior vampires if you will. They may have an impact on a game, they can cap an objective, or they might just as easily get wiped quick sharp. But for the net cost, you're not unhappy that they come with our fair prince. What's a lot more impactful though is our final unit, a 3 model count of Vargheists. Proper bestial flying vamps if ever you've seen them. These are your scalpel that can be set up in reserve and deep struck wherever you well please. And at 4 wounds apiece, these winged beasts have a very strong stat line, are mobile as all get out, and as a cherry on top, unmodified hit rolls of 6 pony up 2 hits instead of 1. Very nice. And there you have a absolutely nailed on 1000 points of Blood Drive Vamps. Again, somewhat just expanding on what we already had. The Crimson Cult are a fairly neat addition, both for the monetary and in-game cost, and the Vargheists add another string to your adaptability bow. There's a decent chunk of hit and run tactics outside of your zombies, and it's going to be a bit tricky keeping your lords up with your Blood Knights or Vargheists, but this is still the best way, as I see it, to organically grow your forces. As far as the cost goes though, well, the good news is they're both comparable. The bad news is you're paying roughly the same price for 62 models in the Skellies list as you are for the 38 in the Vamps build. Of course, you're not talking apples for apples when it comes to Death Rattle Skeletons and Blood Knights, but it's still noteworthy. Plus you've also got 10 leftover skeletons when you factor in the start collecting box from last time. But that's it, the long awaited part 2. Yes, there was a little less variety than I'd hoped for, but the breakdown of the Battle Times points costs have necessitated this course. But there's plenty of room for fun Tory times as we continue our journey up to 2000 points. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.